bhavatu sahana bhunaktu sahaviryam gravavahai tejasvina vadidamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we be nourished and protected. May we gain strength through knowledge. May we come to divine realizations, and may we never quarrel. Peace, peace, peace. And thank you so much for tuning in to the second video. I'm just so excited to get into it. Second video on asana in this series on the 8 limbs. Asana, of course, being the most popular, the most recognized, and unfortunately synonymous. It's become synonymous with the word yoga itself. But here we are. Let's learn about it. Let's at least understand it. And like I talked about in the first video, the definition of it. We've covered that. We've covered how we can understand the definition in the movements, in the sequencing, and infuse the rest of the limbs into that practice. But today I want to talk about where it comes from. Why are we even doing the movements on the mat? How did it get so popular around the world? And where did it come from as far as the spiritual understanding of it? So remember, pause before we get into that. Do the like thing, do the subscribe thing, do the shares and the comments and all that good stuff. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. All right, let's get to the topic here. Asana started in India, right? Where yoga originated. Asana started there. And it wasn't taught by just the regular people of the society. The first teacher that we can say really put in sequencing and created this shala, or a place of doing yoga mentality, was Krishnamacharya. So he taught the mat, he taught on the mat, he taught the postures, and he did so to young men at first, in the very beginning. He himself was a priest in that priestly caste, so the Brahmanites. He was, not our common definition of priest. He was someone studying and realizing towards that yogic realization. And the postures weren't something that was ever really popular. It wasn't being utilized in any kind of context other than sitting down or lying down, finding a still and comfortable posture like we talked about in the definition. But here he was, and he started to heal people with the postures, and young men, like I said, of that area of India. So when he was teaching them, why the postures? Where do these names come from, right? It's such a common question. It was one that I had immediately when I started down this yogic path. And the answer is that they are all connected to some part of the teaching, some part of the texts. They all have a story attached to them, or a purpose. The name itself, not just the posture, but the name of the posture itself was meant to carry a purpose. So when these young and fit and athletic men were doing these postures, they were being told stories and being made to hold the postures or flow through the postures at a very intense rhythm, but with the contemplation of the story, with the contemplation of the meditative practice going on the whole time. But they already had that. They already had some semblance of knowledge of the stories, of the characters within the stories. So for them, hearing something like, let's use Vashisthasana. Okay, so Vashista is a sage from the ancient texts. They would already have known about that. They would have already heard stories, been told stories, and they have this prerequisite understanding of who Vashista is. So when they hear Vashisthasana, the asana representing Vashista, they already can be reflecting on those stories in the moment without having to be told them immediately. So all of these different postures have names. Even the animals, we represent some animals when we move on the mat. The balancing postures, sometimes it's just the name of the limb that we're using as we're balancing or executing the posture. So even those have deeper meanings. And one that always reminds me of that is just Parsvottanasana. Parsvottanasana means the extended flank. So in that one, we're kind of being referenced in the ways that we reference an animal or a four-legged being, but we're up on two legs and it's the extended rear quarter of the animal that's being extended. So everything, every single posture has a purpose, okay? So that's what I'm trying to get through here on this video. And I could tell you at great length a lot of the stories. I don't know all of them, but it became an obsession of mine to really know why we're doing what we're doing on the mat. And things like the sun salutations, okay? I'll give you a few examples today because I feel like it's important just to take away that inquisitive nature, that curiosity, the itch of seeking knowledge. And I hope that you can take that, run with it, and hopefully scratch that itch. If you have any questions, of course, leave them in the comments below. If you have specific postures you'd like me to cover and tell the stories of, or create that reference for you, then absolutely I'd like to do that. Let me know, because I love making it more relative. I love making the stories more modern and relatable, so that they're not just the stories of old, and ancient dead languages from ancient texts. I like reminding myself and reminding others that the texts themselves are alive. The vibration from those words is still impactful today. So Surya Namaskar. Surya Namaskar. When we do sun salutations, that's what they're called. Surya Namaskar. When we greet one another, soul to soul, self to self, it is Namaste. And that word's been, overused. It's been played 1,000 times over. So that might lose some of its impactful nature, but that's basically what that term is trying to get across. That's what that's trying to relate, is the self in me is the self in you. The spirit, the soul in me is one and no different than the soul in you. So imagine we say that to the sun, to Surya. And scientifically, this is not something to just scoff at. This is actually aligned with our scientific understanding that we came all from one subatomic particle. Everything we see in front of us, all at one point expanded out of a particle that was smaller than an atom. So everything that was compacted into that atom, as Einstein said, energy was never created and it can't be destroyed. So at that moment, all of this energy wasn't created. It was already existing in that particle. So that means that our energy that makes us move, that makes us exist, that brings life to us, is the same energy that exists in that sun. So Surya Namaskar is Namaste, sun. It's the real acknowledgement that myself is the same light, the same energy, the same vibrance that that sun is, and they all come back from the same source. Powerful contemplation to match a powerful movement pattern and sequence that we do on the mat. Let's go through another one. Let's say, let's go Virabhadra. All right, Virabhadra, Virabhadrasana. Maybe one of the more popular postures in all of the yoga practice, definitely used in most sequences. That warrior 1, and warrior 2 and warrior 3 too. Why not? Let's lump them all in. I've told this story a bunch of times and I will tell it over and over. I love it so much, but there's so many details that you could make this story either be told in a few minutes, or you could tell this story and take an entire hour to really, pull out all the details to it. Today I'll just tell it in a few minutes. But basically, that posture, Virabhadra, is representative of a devata or deity in the ancient texts, a character in these ancient texts. So the word Virabhadra doesn't mean warrior. He was a warrior, yes, and the actions that he took were that of a warrior at times. But it's not the word warrior. It doesn't translate to warrior. And that right there should create that curiosity, because I could tell you one story about Virabhadra, but there are many stories about Virabhadra. And once you know that that's the persona that's embodied and created on the mat when you're in that posture, it brings much more to that posture, to every breath in that posture, than just warrior one. Okay? I can promise you, I really can. Hanumanasana, what we know as full splits, is one of the greatest figures in any epic tale that's ever been told. It's representative of Hanuman and that amazing leap that he took. So full splits, or I've heard it called the monkey pose. I mean, obviously, if we look into just one or two of Hanuman's stories, we're going to derive so much more potent contemplation while in that posture, and a very strong defiant nature, but in a positive way, in a positive light, in a faithful way, that those poses that even half splits, half Hanumanasana, Ardha Hanumanasana, standing or down on the knee, whatever makes it a posture that's accessible to you, when you're in that moment now, where the mind can wander to, where you allow it to wander to, is to these beautiful and divine stories, these divine messages and principles and powerful, really expansive contemplations. So Hanumanasana, that's another one. Like I said before, Vashisthasana, the sage, that's an amazing sage, and that story that depicts the side plank is another favorite of mine. It's him in the face of an enemy of the material type, of a powerful warlord, and he shows his power not by might, not by becoming bigger than life and destroying them, but instead just removing their weapons from the equation with a simple tilt of his staff, where one end of the staff touched the ground and the other was at an angle, and that's why side plank represents his posture. It's Vashisthasana. That's what the side plank's called. So, and there's the full expression of that, where you're holding the other leg out while you're balancing on one leg in the side plank, and that split movement is the staff, is the danda that he has resting in his lap, just sitting in Padmasana, in lotus pose, in the middle of this, this hellish situation, this really dangerous, seemingly dangerous situation. But with faith and showing that divine power that comes with that faith, that immovable, fearlessness, that is definitely what comes from yoga. And if that's a contemplation when you're in that side plank, which is a very difficult posture to sustain, then again, you can breathe into it. You can really feel that vibration that you're meant to tap into, not just side plank, right? Side plank. It's so basic. It's so void of meaning. Here we'll talk about the danda too, the chaturanga dandasana, tula dandasana, the staff. And that staff is correlated with the spine. So that spine, tailbone to crown, is also representative of our Sushumna, or where the chakras exist. Those energy wheels that are mystical and are within us, but at the same time, very emotionally bound to us, and we can understand them and we can study them in their physical manifestation. So it's a very emotional practice to contemplate the danda and the shashumna and these chakras and the alignment of the chakras, or the cleansing of the nadis, the energetic currents that are flowing that create the power of the chakras. All of this stuff can be contemplated while we're in a simple and repetitive posture like a chaturanga dandasana, or a hopefully lengthier hold like a tula dandasana, where you're balancing on one leg and the back leg and the arms create that eternal line of the danda, that eternal power. So it's not just the names of people. It's not just Vashisthasana, Hanumanasana. It's the Dandasana. It's Parsvottanasana, the flank, the extended flank. It's Trikonasanas, the triangles. They have meaning. The Trinity, that has a meaning. The creation, sustenance, and destruction. The divine, ultimate, supreme one, the individual fragmented of that, the self, and then the creation from that, the world, that Trinity. I mean, every triangle, thinking about that in a moment's notice or in a few breaths, diving into that and not having the mind be allowed its own freedom and waywardness, that it's going to just wander away and it'll come back if it wants. You've really got it by the horns, but it's in these pleasant divine contemplations, very heavy topics. And imagine if that's what we were all doing. Imagine if we could take the teachings of B.K.S. Iyengar and Pattabhi Jois and Shivananda, these teachers that are all derived from that one teacher. Krishnamacharya created a whole lineage of teachers that spread yogasana all over the world. And they themselves had those stories. They carried the postures into those stories, bringing it back to when he originally was teaching them. So imagine holding a Virabhadrasana, a warrior posture, while you're having a story told to you about Virabhadra. And the body is witnessed, and the mind is witnessed, and the posture is comfortable and sustainable, and you're entertained. You see, it's a contemplation of a divine nature, yes, but it's entertaining. These stories were meant to be captivating. The postures were meant to do the same thing, not just because they're energetic and they're exercise and you get into great shape doing them, or the playlist was really good, but because the stories are being felt, the vibration of the postures are being felt, that lead you again into that meditative final posture of that Shavasana, that corpse pose. Shavasana, the corpse. No better way to end on that, because they all taught that. So they all had a way that after the end of the practice, you would just lay 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 15 minutes. You just lay, maybe even 5 sometimes, depending upon the style of the practice, right? If it's a slow and low practice, that sattvic state, that fluid and gentle, peaceful state is found in the postures. So Shavasana is just, one more time dunking your head under before the end of the practice. But if it's something like a vinyasa where it's work and you're moving and you're breathing heavily, then that posture, Shavasana, it should be let to rest. You should be laid to rest. You should rest in peace, Shavasana, as a corpse. So you're heavy, you're still, your mind is heavy, your mind is still. Your observant state has really taken hold. It's been being trained, it's been being sharpened the entire practice. And now in Shavasana, that observant state is just pure bliss. It is, you get to rest, right? It's a hallelujah. It's a thank goodness, thank God, I'm here, I've made it, and I get to just rest. So it should be enjoyed for as long as need be. And all the culmination of the instruction, that's another thing. That the culmination of the instruction of the practice, all the guidance that's been given through the practice, can be brought into that one moment, that present moment in Shavasana, and the asana practice ends. So we just saw how many postures? 5, 6, I don't know how many I rambled through. I know I'm just rambling because this is such a great passion of mine. to bring these messages, to bring the stories, the lessons into the postures. I think we should all know them, and it makes it less silly too. You know, your down dog and your cat, cows, all these things that we do that are animals and they're playful and we should know why. We should understand why. Otherwise, it seems more out of place, right? Because that name of the posture came from a Sanskrit word. So, Adho Mukha Svanasana, saying downward facing dog, why? Why a Shvana? Why a dog? Why Adho Mukh? Why is his face down? Is it just for a stretch down his hamstrings? Is it just so we can be playful like dogs? Maybe in sometimes, but some of the other postures, the cobra, okay, is it just because I'm shaped like a cobra, or what does the cobra derive? Yeah, so study into it, look into it, leave the comments, please, guys. If you have any postures, I mean, you can see how excited I get. I would have so much joy giving you lessons on the different postures, the meaning behind them, the stories behind them in these long form, but breaking them down one at a time, I'd have more time to really delve into the full stories and the principles behind them. So yeah, there you go. Asana lesson number 2, check. I think that's enough for asana. I think we can move through asana. We get where it came from. We get why we do it. We get what the definition originally was. Now we can keep moving down the 8 limbs. Before I close out today, though, I'm not going to do another subscribe and like and comment thing and share. You know that by now. But what I will do is tell you this. I'm thinking about releasing some kinds of like podcasty type videos as well. So any topics for those? Those are going to be more just casual, kind of just throwing stuff out there, you know, seeing what the vibes are like, seeing what you guys are interested in, and making it more of a casual type thing where I'm not just going through, you know, the 8 limbs. It's very structured, or when I do the word of the day, it's a definition of something, but kind of covering more broad topics, more general topics, and in that personal type feel. So any topics for those, please guys let me know. Or if you just think it's a good idea or if it's a bad idea, let me know that as well. I appreciate all your feedback. If you think it's a bad idea though, I probably won't listen to you because I'm already going to do it. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of you. I hope you have a blessed day. What do we do at the end? Oh, that's right. We sing mantra. Today's mantra: from ignorance to truth, from darkness into light, and from the mortally bound perception to an immortal realization, the asatoma. Om asatoma sadgamaya tamasoma jyotirgamaya mrityormam ritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.